So, hello everyone. Are you? Yeah, it's okay. Well, this is my first time here at this event. I'm very happy to contact me to make this talk. I think it's very interesting to do it here. This talk is about custom properties. Maybe some of you know this feature, and it's about CSS. This is something funny because we are not going to talk about JavaScript maybe today. And well, let me introduce myself. I'm Kiko Ruiz. And I'm working as a front-end enabler at Adevinta. Maybe here you have two questions. What is a front-end enabler and what is Adevinta? So front-end enabler, we are people in this company that are in one part working in the architecture, building the architecture or at the front-end part, and also making the front-end developers do their job faster by trying to get more trainings or building tools for the front-end developers. So Adevinta is a new name. It's formerly known as Shipstead Spain, and me, in my part, I'm distributed to the coaches.net and motors.net teams. I'm seeing here some colleagues from there. So just to put it in context about what we have there, we have in the UI side, we have React components that are responsible to the JavaScript interaction, the logic that is used, and it's in another used in another repositories, but we are all the bundle of the JavaScript and the templating in this side, and we have another side with the CSS architecture built on SAS. So until now, in our CSS architecture, CSS preprocessors did the job. That means that we were taking advantage of the features that SAS have, like variables, mixing, functions, and all of this. This, when appeared SAS, this simplified a lot of the work in the styling part. But the thing is, CSS is evolving a lot during the last years, and we can do things with CSS with the new features, with some of new features. That means that we can do things in the browser. We can do things natively, and we, as a front-end developers, our goal is to try to use the more native features as we can. So some years ago appeared custom properties, and that was a good news. But we didn't know how to use it, how to implement it. So we saw some key features that we can use, and we can take advantage and can improve a lot our CSS architecture at the moment. So we can have variables in the client side. That means that so far we used the SAS variables, but with custom properties appears like the concept of the variable in the browser. This type of variables are dynamic variables, and this is very, very different than how variables behave in SAS. So we will review it in the next steps. We can focus on responsive design because there is we can introduce new concepts thanks to custom properties. And well, I will explain it in detail in the next slides. And they can be easy to use because custom properties at the end behaves like CSS common properties, the properties that we already know. So. Sorry. In the client side means in runtime. That is, if we compare to CSS preprocessors variables, they behave very, very different because when you use a variable in the SAS language, we build the final CSS, and a variable is processed in the build process. Its value only takes effect in that compilation process. This is very different in custom properties, and regarding this example, I'm assuming most of you already know the syntax of custom properties. They are very easy to use. You can here see a selector for a link component. It's a simple example that uses a custom property named color and a CSS property color that use the custom property. This is the very, very simple usage of custom property. So why we say the custom property, the CSS variable as it's also known, is dynamic, and it's meant to work in runtime. So because the custom property can behave different than SAS variables. In this case, we have another selector, a link hover selector, that is redefining the custom property. So that means that we are changing the value of the custom property used in the main selector. So we are doing it in runtime. Yes? So why we say they are dynamic? Because they know the DOM tree. They behave like CSS, the common properties we already know. So in this another example, we have a card selector with a different custom property named flex duration and two properties, display flex and flex duration, using the custom property set in this main selector. So another example that explains its dynamism is that we can change the value in a media query. So this is happening in a runtime process because the browser is behaving in a different way. So another example of its dynamism is we can work with them with JavaScript. That means we can select, for example, all the card selectors in the same page, and we can set custom properties by using the style attribute and the method set property. We can use the set property and the get property methods. There are no new there are no new methods. They exist in the JavaScript API. That's nothing new. But that's something that led us to share values, to share variables between JavaScript and CSS. We can focus on responsive design. And why? Because I think that there's a lot of companies or websites that they define themselves as mobile first thinking or mobile first way of doing or way of creating websites. But I think this is not right in most examples. And one of the examples is our company. We noticed that there is a lot of definitions when we work on components or pages or own pages, and we see that there is no a clear definition or what is the basic or the main state of a component. That means that when we work on for example, a card, as we said, a selector card component, we cannot focus on the main state of the component, because if we start to working on the desktop version, we can make the things very complex. We will see an example here, and to try to resume or to explain this concept of why we can focus on responsive design, is that we can simplify the component developments by setting an initial state and then its behaviors. We can split these concepts by using custom properties. And here we have an example. This is another example following the previous example of the card with different custom properties. So in this case, when we work with this component and with the style of this component card, we set initial values, the initial properties. That means that they are the first state of the component. So if we think in mobile first, these should be the styles of this mobile version. Translated to CSS, using custom properties, we can set the custom property that was gone right now. We can set it here in the selector, but we can avoid it and just set the initial state of properties by calling the custom property and assign a default value. So this is something new that it's introduced in custom property. We can call a custom property, but also assigning a default value. And this is important to know that we can even call the custom property without passing a default value, and the code won't break. This is a different behavior than a SAS variable that if it doesn't exist, the code breaks. In this case, if the custom property is not set, the property of CSS won't work. But in this case, we have a default value. With this state, we have the initial state. So we can focus on responsive design, on mobile thinking, because we have the very basic picture of a component. What happens after? what happens after is a user interaction or even a change of the browser behavior. So all the rest is defined as the behaviors of the component, because it's all the it's not all we can show. Sorry, it's not all the component is shown in its initial state. It's something that's happening when there is some behaviors. That's why we call it behaviors. So the last key feature we should review about the custom property is a scope. Sorry. This is a scope, and this scope is based on what happens in the CSS properties. I said before that the CSS properties, the custom properties behaves the same way the common properties we know in CSS. So they take into account the block scope, the inheritance, and then the specificity. So we can here a basic example. Given this HTML example, we have 3 class names that will be 3 selectors in our style sheet. Okay, we have a title in the deepest level. So I think you can see this example, because I think I'm not. Okay, yes. So we here have a style sheet that is applying styles to the previous example of the HTML I showed. So these 3 examples are defining a custom property, but only one selector, the card title, is applying padding for the element we saw in the previous example. So what do you think it will be the padding value applied to the card title selector? So if you choose 12 pixels, you are right, because of its specificity. So just a little small quiz about how CSS property behaving. It's very interesting to may have clear that we can redefine a custom property many times we want in all the DOM tree. They will be affecting, as the CSS properties can affect, this SWI-card title selector. So make sure that you are trying to do it in the right location. Another thing to say about these examples is that maybe the naming used here for the custom properties is not the best one. I just try to be the most simple as I could, because if you name a custom property with this generic name, you can have problems with specificity and inheritance. So far, custom properties, I think we think it show us a lot of things interesting to apply in our architecture, because they give us a lot of improvements. We love SAS, but we really still loving SAS, because CSS preprocessors can still help. This talk is not about how to replace SAS with custom properties. Many people, or many sites, there are people that are trying to do it, and I think it's fine. But in our case, we are using CSS preprocessors, and we think we can really take advantage of some of its features. So, what things we can use it and are very interesting for us? Well, the first one, object-oriented styles. At this moment, with SAS, we can make our components very, very independent and very simple in the style parts. We can have static variables, and this is the opposite I explained to the behavior of the custom properties. The SAS variables behaves the same the other way, and that's good as well. I will explain it why. And good news is that they work together. We can work with custom properties within SAS files. So object-oriented styles help us to maintain and to understand the code. So I think it's okay to leave it. So in this example, we have a swilling that are using the nesting selectors of SAS properties. This is a very basic feature of SAS, and I think it's very important to keep using it. Static means not in runtime. This is the opposite of how custom properties behaves. That means that we can use static values. This is very interesting because we can have a set of variables that maybe we don't want to change in all the leaf of our web page. We can have, for example, a set of colors, a set of spacings or fonts that when we run a web page, we don't want to change. But, for example, it's important to make it static because they can belong to a design system. They can be defined as guidelines to follow in the UI part. So they are very good to be as SAS variables. We can have it with a specific naming standard and whatever we want. And this drive us to try to understand the concept about the custom properties, and that is that we should change values and not variables. So if we think SAS variables can use it as static values, we only should change custom property values. That means we can change the usage of SAS variables, but not where the custom property is used. I will show an example. Okay, this is a more complex example, but in this case we have the same example as before, but using SAS variables. So if we think, if we have a defined design system with, or for example, colors for our links, or any color, any spacing, just think that this is a very basic example. But in this case, we can have a color set for links and for how it behaves or how it shows when there is a link hover. So we can put it in a SAS variable. This variable with this variable, we'll have a static variable that won't change in the runtime process. Okay, so what we change is the value of the custom property. That can be this SAS variable or can be whatever we want. So it's important to make sure that the color property is only set once, and where the custom property is set can be in another place. And the SAS variable just can or should behave as a static representation of a, as I said many times, a design system or a theming set of variables. So, more or less, I try to explain what's the main interest to apply in our CSS architecture. And there is some final thoughts and conclusions about this approach. So using custom property right now is not supported and won't be supported by Internet Explorer 11. That means that we have to take care, because some sites in our company maybe still support this browser. So, in my opinion, my opinion about this is to push the sites to review if it is important to still support this browser, because the data, the traffic data we have, is not important, not relevant at all. But it's something to take into account. As I said, this talk is not about, we can compare, but it's not about how to replace SAS with custom properties. We can do it, but it's not the main aim of this talk, and it's not what we really want in our architecture. But some things like the calc method, some things like operation with data in SAS is very easy to do. We can use functions, we can use mixins, and with custom properties, I can say it is not as simple as with SAS. But the basic operation can be done with the method calc. That's something that appeared as a new feature recently. This is a very opportunity to make easy theming in the client side. Okay, this is the time of theming that we think we can have a light theme, or this is the very basic example. We can have a light theme and a dark thing of our site, and we can change it. We want to be changed in the client side. With custom properties, this is very easy. And as I explained it in the initial static behavior concept, with the behaviors, we can switch with these things. Before doing this move, no, it's not a replace, a complete replace, but it's an important move. We have to make sure that we are defined very good practices in our code, because that can simplify what we really want, that is have a very clean architecture and scalable. And try to think outside the box, because they give us very good opportunities to improve our code. And well, because CSS are evolving, as I said, and I think it's fine to also experiment and to try things. And this is it. Any questions or doubts?
Just a second. I'll just ask for a round of applause for Kiko for this amazing presentation.
Thank you.
I was wondering, when you do the hover, the variable just change and state change it, or when you get out of the hover, when you do blur, it returns to the original value?
Yeah. It behaves like if you. It's different because when you make a selector with a color, imagine that you are not working with custom property. You have a link with a color, and then a link hover with another color. Okay, now, it's different, but what you are trying to know is that if the color changes to the neutral state, no? Okay, that happens. Okay, the custom property are just redefining the value. But the good thing in this case is that you are not overriding the property color. I think this is the good thing about custom properties, that they don't override properties because they are set just once. You are only redefining the custom property. It's like the right way.
Any more questions? There you go.
Why is that a good thing? I mean, what you just answered, why is better to change the variable than the custom, I mean, the custom property than the property itself?
Yeah, because you try to think that you are not changing directly the property. That can have many effects you just think we can have a lot of selectors using the same property. Yes, so they are overriding, no? So I think CSS, it was not completed, and with custom properties, no, we have this a new feature, because for me, what I think is that overriding properties is not a good way of defining, no? The styles.
Hey, as you say, in Internet Explorer 11 doesn't support variables. So, in your opinion, which would be a workaround to make the app display as better in Internet Explorer?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part. No.
Okay, as you say, Internet 11 doesn't support variables. So, in your opinion, what will be a workaround to make the website display?
If you want to support this browser, there is an option. You can use a post CSS plugin that can give you another output of your CSS, but covering all what the custom properties are doing in your code. But well, you won't take advantage of custom properties as such, but you have the styles you want. So yeah, there is an option, but maybe it's not the most performant.
Okay, guys. Unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions. Other questions can be asked offline. Well, we'll ask another round of applause for Kiko for the presentation.
Thank you very much.